Indeed, and to find out some of the biggest climate challenges that we are currently facing, and especially amid the pandemic, we're now connected with Dr. Theresa Lim, the Executive Director of the ASEAN Centre For Biodiversity. Good morning, Dr. Lim. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, Caroline. And good morning to your viewers.
Good morning, Doctor.
Great. Speaking of our viewers, could you tell them about COP26, or Conference of the Parties 26, and why it is important this year?
Well, this year it's important. As you've mentioned in your background earlier, it's an agreement several countries in the world, and important this time because we're doing it during the pandemic. It has been postponed actually, and this time the discussions will integrate the issues that we need to do at the global level to include post-recovery, taking into account the aggravating impacts of climate change. It will also highlight nature-based solutions, and that's even more important for ASEAN as a region because aside from that we are vulnerable from climate change, we also have one of the highest natural wealth, biodiversity in the world as a region.
Right. And Doctor, if we're talking about conferences, it is speaking about matters that is happening in the world, and there is a goal. Now, the president-designate of COP26, Alo Sharma, has stated now, talking back off with the Paris Agreement in 2015, they still want to reach the goal of aiming 1.5 degrees. Is it still achievable right now? And what other goals that they want to achieve with the COP26?
I think it is if the world comes together, but to reduce emission. However, we also need to take into account the contribution of nature as well.
Yeah.
So it should be an approach. So if we are able to get all the countries to agree on this, they're common but differentiated responses, I think that would be possible.
You're right, especially from the G20 countries.
Right.
I mean, those put up about 80% of emissions in the world itself.
Dr. Lim, earlier on you touched on the fact that what makes COP26 is unique is because we're in the middle of a pandemic. But how has the pandemic itself affected global warming? Does it have a significant impact?
Well, it actually increased our awareness about nature. The lockdowns all over the world, we had the opportunity to see how this contributed to, we had cleaner air, and then we also had the opportunity to re-examine our relationship with nature. And I think the pandemic provided opportunity. But and at the same time, look at reducing climate impacts and also nature-based solutions as another means to recover from the pandemic, to build back better. So I think that's what the pandemic provided opportunity to examine our relationship with nature and see what can happen if we are able to recover properly.
Because the last thing we want is when we return from this pandemic and things go back to the way they were and things get increasingly worse, right?
Right, exactly. And speaking about climate issue, what do you think, in your opinion, is our biggest climate issue? I mean, there is coal power, there's deforestation, there's also emission from road transport. What do you think, in your opinion, Dr. Lim, that really, gave a lot, especially during climate change?
I think one of the challenges is really to reduce our dependency in fossil fuel. So shifting slowly to renewable energy is a challenge, and it's a mindset that we need to adopt. Also, as I mentioned earlier, looking at the contribution of nature as for mitigation and adaptation, especially for the ASEAN region, which is rich in biological resources, in biodiversity, and in nature. So we need to have that integrated mindset. And
Right.
then, of course, looking at the contribution of the nature to adaptation.
Yeah, but which country do you think that really has the deep impact because of the climate change that is affected very much right now? If you could choose one or so.
Uh, Actually, the entire ASEAN region, the 10 countries, has been experiencing a lot from climate change. The ASEAN report said we had like more than 1,000 natural disasters from 2018. And then most recently, of course, Indonesia, the Philippines has been also experiencing flooding, typhoons, and then also and some areas are experiencing droughts as well. So
Yeah.
it's a variety of natural disasters that are now linked to the changing climate.
Yeah,
So we need to work together to be able to address this, because it's impacting all of us in the ASEAN.
Yeah, it's such a shame because I remember, like, even in the late 90s when this was all, climate change was brought to our attention, a lot of people were still non-believers about it. They were like, oh, no, that's a hoax or whatever.
Correct.
It's too bad that we've had to see all these weather system changes in order for us, a lot of
Yes.
people to realize suddenly, oh, it was real, or we
Yeah.
should have done something a long time
After
ago.
decades.
Right, and hopefully it's still not too late. Now, let's discuss a little bit about biodiversity, Doctor. In what way is the climate connected to biodiversity? How important is it for us to preserve biodiversity? Does it actually solve or at least partially alleviate these climate change problems?
Yes, of course, Paul. The ASEAN, Indonesia, the Philippines, we still have some intact forests, and these are, these are areas where there's a lot, they are used. They have a pump to store carbon from the atmosphere. So if we keep them intact, the remaining forest areas, if we keep them intact, then it stores carbon, and then it prevents the release of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So that's one. And then of course we have mangroves and oceans,
Right.
and also reefs that help us. It also sequesters carbon. At the same time, these are very useful for adaptation measures. We have heard of stories of villages that were saved because of mangroves that are still intact, and which prevented the full impact of typhoons and storm surges. So these are really, this demonstrates how useful, how important our biodiversity is. And it's not just one ecosystem that the ASEAN is rich on. We have several ecosystems from the sea to
Yeah.
the shore.
Right.
It's the coral reefs, seagrass beds,
Correct.
mangroves. They all work together to buffer us from storm surge and storm
Right.
winds, from storms.
Right. And speaking about the ASEAN region itself, Dr. Lim, from the ASEAN Centre for Biodiversity, how are your member states prepared for the COP26 meeting, and what are the biggest climate issues in Southeast Asia region?
All right. So the ASEAN Centre for Biodiversity works within the framework of the ASEAN. So we work with the 10 countries in the region. And there are two major conferences that are interrelated that are coming up. And of course, this is the COP26 on climate, the COP15, which is on biodiversity. And what we are doing now is linking the important outcomes, the expected outcomes from both conferences. And we work with especially for the Convention on Biological Diversity, because that is nature itself, and we work with the ASEAN member state to see what would be the common understanding on the positions that are relevant, especially to the 10 ASEAN member states. And one of them is diversity. This is of course related to climate as well when it comes to nature-based solutions. As I mentioned, this is that aside from the the climate change conference, of course, there's a call for the developed countries to reduce their emissions. But we are more of like the ASEAN region. We are more of the at the receiving end of the impact.
Yeah.
And so aside from the call for reduction of emission for those country emitters for the ASEAN, it's important as well work together to maintain the natural resources that help us adapt to the impacts of climate change. And two issues that are interrelated in the climate conference, nature-based solutions, in biodiversity conference, it's Main Street biodiversity into climate action. And these are both relevant to the ASEAN member states. And of course, financing is important. We cannot we cannot be able to move forward if there's not enough investment that will go to the protection of our environment as we move forward to recover from the impacts of the pandemic, realizing the interconnectivity of health and nature and climate.
It's all integrated. Yeah.
Right. Dr. Lim, well, I mentioned earlier in regards to how people now are more aware of climate change and global warming, but not aware enough. I mean, there are still so many people out there that need to be educated. So how do we promote climate awareness to the public? Because people have so many other things on their mind right now, the ongoing pandemic, financial hardship due to the pandemic, and even inequality. How would you suggest we're able to promote climate awareness to the public?
I know, Paul, it's really challenging. Sometimes people realize that these are interrelated. And so the approach to communication is really to always emphasize the connection between the health. It's the health, biodiversity, and climate nexus that we need to guys in our communication. And of course, not just yours. It's very important. The media is very important. Getting this message across. Social media is also very important. We are also working with the youth. The youth has a very wide outreach, and we appreciate there's we have an expanding constituency in the youth sector.
Yeah, I was just going to tap on you on that. You have 8,000 young men and women, involving the global youth on the COP26, and that is a very huge margin, especially for the youngins right now. They understand what climate change is. They know what is going on right now. They're the ones that's now, they have to take care of the earth.
Especially since it's probably been happening for most of their lives as opposed to us.
Right. So is that why the goals of, involving this young generation for the summit itself, Dr. Lim?
Yes, that's right, Caroline. It's really, and Paul is right. They are really experiencing the impacts most of their lives, and they really want to improve their future and their children's future as well. So it's really very important to their participation is very important in advocacy campaign.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lim, for your time. We really do appreciate your discussion with us in regards to the upcoming COP26. We hope that everything goes well, runs smoothly, and we get the desired results. And we will continue to monitor the situation as well from right here at See Today. Once again, this has been Dr. Lim, the Executive Director of the ASEAN Centre For Biodiversity, all the way from Manila in the Philippines. Take care, Dr. Lim. We will talk to you again real soon. Have a great day. Stay healthy and safe always.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Carla.
Have a great morning.
It's for
Wow.
our young ones, by our young ones.
Exactly.
I like-